What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Tom Aspinall breaks silence and goes off on Ciryl Gane. Tom posted a video on his YouTube channel revealing that he believes Ciryl Gane should have been disqualified after his double eye poke. And before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video to help support the channel. He thinks it's outrageous that Gane was warned at least once for poking already, and the ref had told him to keep his fingers closed. Here's what Tom had to say.
How is he not disqualified off that?
It's outrageous. You already got one twice? What? At least once for poking.
Twice before he got one for it.
Keep his fingers closed, the ref said. Nearly poked me in the eye before. People start booing me like it's my fault.
Why are you booing?
He double poked in the eye, mate. Trained for 14 months. Didn't want someone's finger knuckle deep in my eye.
What's it going to take to change something so people don't get really injured by being poked in the eye? It's not a hard job, surely. Something needs doing about it.
That's outrageous, that.
Tom's father also spoke about the situation, questioning the UFC and saying that some fighters' eye poke in a fight compromise the other fighter and win the fight, and everyone forgets about the eye in the end. Here's what his father had to say.
The UFC will have fights of everyone on record. I just wonder if they have data of how many people poke people in the eyes or kick people in the groin and get away with it, and the fight carries on, and the guy, you know, Mike Bisping, he lost his eye. It's just a horrendous thing to think as a parent, really. And I know what it's like these days with people saying what they want, but if it's just your son and they could lose an eye through somebody who constantly pokes eyes, I'm not saying Ciryl does. I think it would be useful to analyse the people who do it and not get them out of the sport, but have them tidy up the game so they don't go and kick people in between the legs and they don't keep constantly poking people in eyes, because a lot of fighters do it and get away with it in the fight, win the fight, and everybody says after, they forget that the guy get poked in the eye, and I just think it's unfair.
Do you agree with Tom and his father and believe that Ciryl should have been disqualified for the eye poke? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Stay here, then he must see somebody after 2 days, okay?
Yeah, we can go and see.
Are you glad he stopped the fight as well?
Huh?
It's good that he stopped the fight.
Yeah. Of course. You should stop the fight until you are good again and until you're cleared from ophthalmology department from our side. After, not for this visit, after the second visit, after make sure everything coming back to normal, the vision, I think everything. Okay?
Okay.
But we didn't find anything dangerous.
Okay, good.
Ikram Aliskerov responds to Khamzat Chimaev's comments. Comments Ikram Aliskerov made leading up to UFC 321 drew the ire of Khamzat Chimaev, but now Aliskerov is claiming what he said to prompt Chimaev's anger was taken out of context. Aliskerov was recently asked if he'd be willing to rematch Chimaev, who brutally dusted him back in 2019. Not only did Aliskerov say yes, he even said he'd be willing to face Chimaev on 2 days' notice. Those comments made headlines, and as we reported here, Chimaev didn't care for them. The Chechen middleweight champ responded by posting this on social media. Why do people give interviews to these idiots? When I say I will fight someone from Dagestan, it's an inter-ethnic problem. When they say they'll fight me, it's sport. Stop being hypocritical. So following Aliskerov's decision win over Park Jung-young at UFC 321, he was asked to respond to Chimaev. Here was some of what the Dagestani fighter had to say. Khamzat misunderstood. The question was asked like this. It started like this. How do you feel about a rematch with Chimaev? I said, hey, I'm not interested in that rematch. Now look at where I am and where Khamzat is. Khamzat is the champion. To get him, there are, I'll say, Makhachev slang. There are 20 rocks you have to get past. I have to go through a meat grinder before I can even talk about a rematch with Khamzat. The question was framed like, what if you got the call tomorrow to fight Khamzat on short notice? Even if it's not Khamzat, but a guy from my gym. The question is about the belt. Aliskerov furthered, if someone is offered a short notice shot at the belt against the best in the world and they turn it down because they're not ready, then I don't consider them a fighter. In this sport, if you're offered a world title fight and you refuse, I think you're an idiot. That was my answer. UFC updates. Okay, now let's take a look at some UFC and fight updates. MMA reporter Patrick McCrory recently posted that lightweights Nurullo Aliyev and Shamrock will throw hands at the UFC's November 22nd card in Qatar. Aliyev is coming off a decision win over Joe Solecki in January, his second UFC win since he graduated from Dana White's Contender Series. Rock, meanwhile, will be making his UFC debut after going 4-0-1 under the Octagon MMA banner. AG Fight is reporting that featherweights Joanderson Brito and Melsik Baghdasaryan will battle at the UFC's December 13th Fight Night card in Las Vegas. Brito is looking to get back in the win column as he's coming off consecutive losses to Pat Sabatini and William Gomez. Brito had won 5 straight before those losses. Baghdasaryan is also looking to get back on track, as he was taken out by Jean Silva in his last outing. The featherweight is 2-3 in his last 5. An Octagon update is reporting that Rafael Estevam has withdrawn from a November 1st flyweight scrap with Alan Nascimento, and that Cody Durden has stepped up to take the UFC Vegas fight. Nascimento recorded a decision win over Jafel Filho in his last fight, which extended his winning streak to 3. Nascimento is 4-1 in his last 5. Meanwhile, Durden is looking to end a 2-fight losing skid as he's coming off losses to Joshua Van and Jose Ochoa. Durden could be on the chopping block if he loses this fight, as he's 1-4 in his last 5. And finally, following his vicious KO loss to Quillan Salkild at UFC 321, Nasrat Haqparast is remaining upbeat. The lightweight posted this statement on Instagram after being finished by a nasty head kick from Salkild. Alhamdulillah for everything, I felt in amazing shape and was ready to deliver, but this result is out of my control, and I accept it because I know Allah is the best planner. If you need a reminder and are wondering, Haqparast had won 5 straight fights prior to UFC 321. Michael Bisping says Aspinall vs. Gane rematch should happen in December. Following the disastrous conclusion to the Tom Aspinall-Ciryl Gane fight on Saturday, lots of people are calling on the UFC to run the scrap back ASAP, and Michael Bisping is one of them. Even if you missed UFC 321, you almost certainly have heard that the headliner was called off in round 1 after Aspinall could not continue. The heavyweight champ was on the receiving end of nasty pokes to both eyes, and since Aspinall informed officials he couldn't see, the fight was called. So due to the awful and unfulfilling ending, there were immediate calls for a quick rematch to get booked. During the post-fight show for TNT, Bisping called for the UFC to rebook the fight for a card right around the corner. They could do the fight next week as long as Tom's eye is going to be fine. Bisping proceeded to mention UFC 322 and 323 as possibilities, which are going down in November and December, respectively. MSG December or even the first fight on Paramount. Stick 3 title fights on there. What a way to go out. There's no question that fans would like to see either of those cards get a 3rd title fight, but you gotta wonder if the promotion would prefer to use Aspinall vs. Gane 2 as a building piece for a card in early 2026. Although Dana White did not provide insights on what card the fight could land on, he did make it clear he wants a rematch and soon. Here's what he had to say during the post-fight presser. They're both in shape. Other than whatever is wrong with his eye, both guys are not injured, so as soon as possible. Right here, right now, being honest, which I never do this ever, is talk about what next fight is going to happen. The rematch is what makes sense. Due to the nasty foul that ended the fight, Gane's been taking some heat online, but the former interim heavyweight champion insists it was an accident. Here's some of what he told the media after. No, I didn't feel anything specific. I didn't do it on purpose. And I know what it is to have an eye poke. When I fought Derek Lewis, I had an eye poke, and I was seeing 2 Derek Lewis for 1 round. So I'm not going to say, yeah, he's a liar. Chances are no one watched the replay of the eye pokes without wincing, but the fouls did happen not long after Gane had tagged and bloodied Aspinall with some nice shots. White also had this to say about how the fight ended while talking to the media. I can't make people fight. If I want to put together a fight, I can't make people fight. You definitely can't make somebody continue if they feel they've been injured. Only Tom knows what happened. Could he see? Couldn't he see? Could he continue? Only Tom knows that. Those comments from Dana White have likely raised a few eyebrows, but Chael Sonnen went even further. During the post-fight ESPN show, the outspoken fighter turned analyst said this: "Being poked in the eye is illegal, but to fight with one eye is very common. The opponent is trying to hit your eye. He's trying to bust you up and make your nose bleed. So that part of it does have a question for guys like Anthony and I. We are trying to be polite. We're trying to show grace. But in all fairness, you're the heavyweight champion of the world. You've got to fight with one eye at times." Sonnen also pointed to the fact that Gane was likely ahead on the scorecards when the fight was called. "I thought the fight was turning out to be a little bit harder than perhaps Tom had expected. I had one concern with Tom, and this is not his fault. It's because he's so doggone good. He's finished 6 guys in the first round. He's never been to a 3rd round, for example. So the question becomes, how are you going to respond when things get tough? I've checked out of fights before. I know what it looks like. I knew he was done." Anthony Smith also cited the fact that he opted to continue fighting during his career, even though he couldn't see on account of an eye poke. I'm not saying it's Tom's fault, and I'm not going to pretend that I know how bad it is or isn't. I think Chael made a poetic point. You have to be used to or willing to fight with one eye. I did it in Singapore. I just walked away and said, let's fight. You either want to or you don't. My fight wasn't for a world title. I didn't have Ciryl Gane in front of me throwing bombs. You never say, I can't see, if you want to continue to fight. At the end of the day, eye pokes, how they happen and how they're handled have long been a source of contention in MMA. As Bilal Muhammad noted on X, a rule change is long overdue. It has nothing to do with gloves. Warn them both right when they enter the cage. If there's an eye poke, you'll lose a point. Then guys will train for it. Black Beast said he does it to catch his breath because there's no consequences. Taking points right away will stop them or slow them down. Alexander Volkov talks about controversy at UFC 321. Some jaws may have been dropped when it was announced that Alexander Volkov had won his fight with Jailton Almeida at UFC 321, but the heavyweight contenders defending how 2 of the 3 judges scored the fight. Since Almeida scored 7 takedowns during the scrap and controlled much of the bout from the top position, many were expecting he would be awarded the fight after 15 minutes. But as noted, 2 of the judges saw it differently, and Volkov was tapped as the winner. While discussing the decision after the fight, Volkov pointed to the fact that he inflicted more damage as to why he was the rightful winner. He was tough, his takedowns were pretty good, he was well prepared. I know it was a little bit funny to see how he took me down again and again, but I tried to give him more punch whenever I was on the ground. In the stand-up, it just felt like I gave him more damage. In the first round, I swept him and gave him some good damage on top, so for sure, he had more damage to put on him, but I feel good. The former Bellator champion also said this. He kind of tried not to lose the fight or tried not to have damage. You can't go to the octagon with these thoughts. It's really hard to sweep or stand up for me when the guy just controls you. With Almeida, nobody gave him good defense on the ground in our division, and he, every time, could try to punch or submit somebody. Now, it's certainly true that Almeida didn't do much with the top position, and even that's an understatement. According to the fight's official stats, Almeida only landed 27 strikes. That's right, only 27. He also wasn't credited with any submission attempt, so this is likely why Dana White had this to say when asked about the decision.
Even though Jailton got all the takedowns in control, he just wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
Even Ben Askren.
Listen, you.
Well, Ben Askren was like, "Why is Jailton like allergic to throwing punches in there?" Was his exact words.
You can't win a fight by just laying on top of somebody. That's not how it works. So I was actually very happy with the way the judges scored that fight.
It'll be interesting to see what comes next for Volkov, who is coming off a razor-thin split decision loss to Ciryl Gane. After UFC 321, the Russian argued that his chances for a title shot have improved, since in his mind, he beat Gane, and the latter was faring quite well against Aspinall until their fight was stopped. Jiri Prochazka sends a message to Alex Pereira. Jiri Prochazka has said numerous times that he wants to throw hands with Alex Pereira again. But following his thrilling win over Khalil Rountree Jr. earlier this month, Jiri's made it clear what matters most is getting another shot at the belt. Since Pereira took out Prochazka for the second time at UFC 303 in June 2024, the former light heavyweight champ has recorded wins over Jamal Hill and Rountree. On account of those victories, and because Jiri's win over Rountree was one of the most memorable fights of 2025, he remains in the title shot mix. But since Pereira has already defeated him twice, it's not clear if Jiri will get that shot, if Poatan remains at 205. Well, recently, Jiri spoke with Bloody Elbow. When he was asked about the possibility of fighting Pereira again, given that Poatan said he wants to fight John Jones, Prochazka said this. Of course, it's a big possibility about this fight, but I don't think the UFC will agree with that. And the second thing is, he is going to heavyweight, so I think he needs to release the title, or I don't know. I really don't care what will be his next move because, like I said, I want to fight for the title, and right now, I don't care if it will be Alex Pereira, Carlos Ulberg, or Ankalaev. Jiri was then asked what matters to him most, avenging his losses to Pereira or hoisting the light heavyweight belt again. If I had to choose between these two options, I'm not obsessed with Alex Pereira. I really don't care about some revenge or something like that. Of course, it's still something I want to, not to prove to others, not to prove to anyone, just to myself, because I know I did a lot of changes inside myself, and now I believe I can bring the belt and win the fight with Alex Pereira. I will find a way. So there's a couple of things to look at here. If Pereira does move up to face Jones in what really would be a super fight, would the UFC make him vacate the belt as Jiri thinks? It seems possible given what's transpired recently with other champions who've moved up a weight class. Even though Jones doesn't hold the heavyweight title anymore, you'd think everyone in the world would want to see Pereira fight for the heavyweight belt if he did beat Jones. And as far as Jiri's title shot aspirations, if Pereira does stay at 205, it seems more likely that Carlos Ulberg will get the title shot call, even though Jiri created another "where were you when" moment at UFC 320. Ulberg has won 9 straight fights. He viciously KO'd Dominic Reyes in his last fight, and he's never fought for the belt. Islam Makhachev calls out Ilia Topuria to UFC White House. During a recent interview with ESPN, Islam Makhachev revealed that he wants to fight Ilia Topuria at the UFC White House event. Here's what Islam had to say.
And now I don't know who is going to be next for Ilia. If we talk about our fights, I have good fights now, and I know he's going to fight soon, and we'll see what's gonna be happening now. He wants to fight in White House, and I also want to be there. I think, yeah, for the, like, it's going to be like big like for MMA community, it's gonna be big fights, you know. And people want this fight, and if UFC want this fight, and we can do this. I don't know. I know UFC want to do like some big fight in White House. Which fight is gonna be bigger than this?
Islam also revealed that he doesn't believe that Paddy Pimblett would be a real challenge for Ilia. He said, "I feel like Arman has to be next. This guy deserves it. He did mistake when he was supposed to fight with me. He's still number 1 in the division. Maybe Arman, maybe Gage, not Paddy for sure." Paddy beat who? Tony Ferguson? Chandler? Everybody beat Chandler. Honestly, it's not big challenge for Topuria. Nobody checked Paddy before. While we're on the topic of Ilia Topuria, he teased an announcement tomorrow. He said the following on X: "Something different is coming tomorrow. Something that also shows who I am outside the octagon. At 10 a.m., I'll be sharing something that means a lot to me and my team. Stay tuned."